Brian Foster, and this is the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. On each of these episodes, Jeremy Floyd and I examined one movie worthy of the coveted Midnight Movie Showtime. We're happy you could join us for today's chat on Avatar: The Way of Water. In the year 2022, the box office is ailing. Superhero movies, formerly the safest bet in the industry, were now tanking. Who will come to save the day now? Time to call in Kenny Loggins and Tom Cruise with Top Gun 2. The Hollywood press can't get enough. They praise Tom for saving the day. But wait, what's this? Another movie coming out in 2022 that surpasses even the toppest of Top Guns? It's James Cameron swooping in to smash box office records and draw audiences out of the woodwork to come back to the theater. Cameron doesn't get as much credit as Maverick for saving the box office, but his consolation prize is that the second Avatar became the third highest grossing movie ever. The Sullys have been living a charmed life since we last saw them in the first Avatar. Jake and Neytiri have 4 kids and a spider, a sort of foster human child. But this all changes when the Sky People return. Now the Sullys are being hunted. They hide out with the Reef People where they have to learn the way of water and live amongst the Tolkun, the world's version of gigantic killer whales. When the soldiers, avatars, and whalers find them, do they run again, or do they stand and fight? Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, Stephen Lang, Cliff Curtis, and Kate Winslet star in James Cameron's 2022 film, Avatar: The Way of Water. Thank you for listening to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. Please enjoy.
Sully's raids are becoming bolder and more frequent. Strikes are well planned. His forces are hitting our outlying sites, the mines, pipelines, cutting off our supply chain.
We have a mission yet?
Indeed we do. Our mission is to hunt down and kill the leader of the Na'vi insurgency, Jake Sully.
No one is more surprised than me to find out that Avatar 2 was really awesome. I wasn't so into the first one, but I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this one.
No, it was a much better movie.
I do think it's pretty extraordinary to take basically Fern Gully and remake it into this, modern epic, and to put his own personal spin on it, which, is of course going to be very water driven, and this does feel more personal to him in a lot of ways.
Totally. I mean, the kids thing, all that stuff. Yeah.
He was put on this planet to make movies.
Absolutely.
Like, I'm convinced that that's his purpose.
Yeah. And yet, like, he's Stanley Kubrick over here, only done 10 movies.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the really
crazy. Frustrating
thing. Because once he did Titanic, he could just totally say fuck off to Hollywood and just do whatever the hell he wants, which, good for him.
That's $1 billion movie in 97.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a thing on the news about it being one of the first $200 million movies, and they're just concerned they won't make their money back, and it was just holy shit.
Yeah, well, it's so far he's done that 3 times, where it's
right,
Titanic, Avatar 1, and Avatar 2.
He's a pretty safe bet at this point.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Why don't you come on out, Mr. Sully? You and I, we got some unfinished business.
Demon! I will kill you as many times as I have to.
All right, welcome back to the Grindhouse Institute's Midnight Movie. I'm Brian Foster, and with me, as always, is Jeremy Floyd. Hello, and how are you?
I'm a little confused, Brian. What state are we in right now?
State of confusion?
State of confusion, exactly. This isn't Kansas. It's the state of confusion.
Got it. Yes, exactly. Now I'm the one that's in the state of confusion.
We are not in Kansas anymore. We are going to Pandora.
Apparently that was a line from this movie that we were just talking about, because usually on a midnight movie we discuss one film, but today we're talking James Cameron's Avatar: The Way of Water, which is the equivalency of, 3 films? So we basically got our triple feature anyway in terms of runtime. But today to discuss Avatar, we have a very special guest, a returning guest. Jeremy, if you could please do the introduction.
Yeah, well, so we're not just discussing Avatar this time around. We're kind of talking about Avatar in a certain context, and that context is something we talked about on a previous show, and so we had to bring back the guest from that show. and person who actually suggested this whole block, Michael Floyd. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. I did not suggest Avatar 2, just for the record. But,
you did, because I'll tell the story, which is that like we were joking around about all of the Orca attacks that were in the news a little while ago, and we were like, oh, we should do a little funny follow up, because this reminds me so much of Orca the Jaws mockbuster.
right.
And you, I think, jokingly suggested, why don't we do Avatar 2? Because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
I must have been completely stoned on fish brine, because I have no memory of that whatsoever. But
Shark fin soup,
shark fin,
illegally imported.
very illegally acquired shark fin soup.
Tulkun soup.
No, yeah, I felt like this was very much a Free Willy type movie, and
Yeah.
same thing, kind of Orca, Jaws. It had a bunch of movies in one. I mean, obviously, with the amount of time that you have to sit through this movie, there's going to be quite a few storylines going on, hopefully. James Cameron, obviously, he's a master at what he does. I love James Cameron. I actually really like this movie. I'm not going to shit on it at all. I thought it was great, but I think it's the only James Cameron movie I'll probably only watch once, 'cause I don't know if I can get through all of it again. I'll probably end up watching it in pieces again if I ever do. But every one of his other movies I've watched dozens of times.
I would say, yeah, because that's how I got through the movie the second time around. I saw it once in the theater in 3D.
Wow, that's a lot.
Oh, good Lord. I mean, I was... Yeah, I've got notes. Anyway, the only real way I think I could enjoy the movie is watching it in chunks. Like, that's... I find it's a far more digestible kind of experience when taken, in
chapters.
segments. Yeah, chapters. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Chapters. It's an epic tome. But that's not the part that's exhausting about it. Hollywood is rife with the absolutely insane 3-hour plus epic
movies
these
that are
days.
too long.
Yeah.
Get people in the theaters again by making them sit there for 3.5, 4 hours now.
Make sure they can't leave.
Yeah, make sure to make it a 3-piss picture, as Jack Warner said about Gone with the Wind. I wanted a 1-piss picture. You gave me a 3-piss picture. But, Rudy Belmer told me that story. It's pretty funny.
That's a funny quote.
Yeah. Well, as a 3-piss picture, it was. It's funny. I going into this one, I wasn't too excited about the first Avatar. It was one of those things where it's like all the stuff that was awe-inspiring about the world and whatever, you felt like you'd kind of seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
The story, it wasn't...
Definitely have heard that story before.
You've definitely seen that story before. Yeah, exactly. You've
Right.
been there, done that. And like, this one was something where I didn't know anything about the movie going into it. I didn't watch any of the trailers.
Me neither.
I kind of knew it, and I knew it existed, obviously. But then, friend just dragged me to the movie, and we're like, "Hey, let's go watch it." I was like, "All right, fine." And I went in with my arms crossed and didn't want to like it, and I totally was won over. And on reflection, I shouldn't have doubted, because who's the king of sequels?
Yeah.
Who makes the best sequels in the world?
That's exactly it. Yeah, James Cameron is the king. The absolute master of the sequel. Absolute
and
master.
he can make the sequel better
than the original, except for Terminator. Exactly.
Including Terminator.
We all agree on that, right?
I mean, I was gonna say what sequel besides Terminator 2, but then I was like, oh right, Aliens. But
Aliens.
yeah. I mean, listen, if Cameron had made this in between 1985 and 1993, I think you'd have a hell of a good movie on your hands.
He also wrote Rambo 2, right?
Oh, that's right.
Which is a totally different movie than the first one.
And his very first movie that he partially directed was Piranha 2. So that fits
Sequel
right in
guy.
with the Grindhouse
for sure
idea here. So yeah,
and the other show he did, right? Wasn't that Piranha?
Exactly. What a segue into the Jaws mockbusters with Piranha and Orca and Alligator.
Right.
I wasn't prepared for how fucking badass Alligator turned out to be. That movie
Alligator's fantastic.
Awesome, dude.
Well, yeah. So like Speaking of the Jaws Mockbuster episode and the movie Orca from 1977 with oh my God, what's his name?
Richard Harris.
Richard Harris and Charlotte Rampling and Bo Derek, Will Sampson.
Excellent movie.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where it was marketed as, and the audience's expectations were supposed to be that this is like, oh, it's Jaws, but with a different type of sea creature.
So much more to that.
It turns out no, it was so much more to it, and it was like the audience's sympathies lay more with the Orca than with the crazy pilot of the boat there.
I mean, the protagonist in that movie is the villain, right? I mean, overall, he does the most villainous heinous act at the beginning, and like that's how they established him as a dick.
Yeah, I mean,
pralines and dick.
It's one of those things where it's like it was not a good act to begin with, but the really heinous part of it was, of course, an accident. Sort of an incidental to the heinous act.
Sure.
So it's
through his heinous act there was a heinouser act that happened. Yeah, I see.
A totally justified act that, or justified rather, the Orca's actions were.
Right.
He was not a James Cameron villain, is what I'm trying to say.
But his story, the captain's story was that he's, sort of starts off damned and tries to, claw his soul back toward the end there.
Right.
But, while we're watching it, like the Orca is the one that you're kind of rooting for in a way.
Yeah.
And like it's the way you root for the slasher sometimes.
Yeah, totally.
In a horror movie.
Yeah, because like I forgot. Yeah, because you really feel kind of sorry for Richard Harris in the beginning because he's like struggling. It's like he's trying to like just make a living basically, and
he's doing his job, right? But it's not a very ethical job.
It just all goes to shit so hard for him,
real bad. Yeah,
and it's like. He already felt terrible about what he did, and
totally.
The whale's just like, "Nope, fuck you. This is personal."
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing, though. Is that what we're saying is that like this movie sets it apart from Jaws in a lot of ways, is in the sense that like it is a lot more sort of complicated. In Jaws, it's this evil monstrous thing, and they're trying to get rid of it.
Right. It's just a force of nature.
In Orca, there was sort of. A lot of sides to be explored there.
Yeah.
This is without challenge the most powerful animal on the globe, the killer whale. The ancient Romans called him Orca Orcinus, Latin for the bringer of death. Yet the most amazing thing about these creatures is their brains. We know very little about the nature of the whale's intelligence, except that it exists and is powerful, and in some respects may even be superior to man.
But what's interesting is that the movie sort of portrays this, whole world of vengeance. That Charlotte Rampling in the very beginning gives this long speech. She's giving kind of a slideshow presentation to
she's a professor,
a class or something.
Yeah. Right.
Marine biologist.
Yeah, and about how orcas, like how intelligent they are, and how complicated their language is, and how their language that we would have to use, they would find redundant because of the way they use sonar and all these different things.
Whales talk. They communicate by a combination of pure sound and sonar echolocation. Their sonar would be a little like our having X-ray vision. If we could look into one another and instantly know if someone else was happy or sad, then a human phrase like, "How are you?" would be meaningless. What we call language, they might call unnecessary or redundant.
And that they, have ways of singing and amusing themselves. And there's all these different things, which, to fast forward to Avatar 2, there's that whole speech by Jermaine Clement about how complicated the whales are in that world.
These are highly intelligent beings, probably smarter than us.
No, smarter than me.
That is setting the bar very low.
How do you know that they're smarter than us?
More neurons, more pathways. Not only are they smarter, they're deeply emotional. We're spiritual. They have music, philosophy, mathematics, complex language.
It totally reminded me of that same speech. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Because that they were talking about that they were attached to he was trying to be...
Right.
We'll get to that part probably,
Yeah.
but didn't he kind of like make a shift all of a sudden? Like now he's the good guy, but he was helping out the asshole whaler. And
Well, the idea was that like the whaling was how his research was being funded, and it was like this necessary evil that he had to justify in his mind. And
I know.
The way he justified it was he was like, yeah, I drink a lot or whatever. It's how he reconciles his
Guilt.
part in this heinous act that he's a part of.
Right, yeah. I mean, well, okay, so yeah, no, I guess I take that back to a certain extent because, yeah, he was just doing his job, but it's like he's also doing this really horrible thing of like extracting goo from the whale brain or something like that. It was like some sort of gland you could only get the extract from or something that's like $200 million or something.
Some sort of gel that came, some sort of byproduct.
Yeah.
So that's what this is all about.
That's it. Amarita.
Bad luck for the big guys. This stuff just happens to stop human aging, like... stops it. Ounce for ounce, the single most valuable substance known to man. Amrita is what's paying for everything here on Pandora now. Even your research, ain't that right, Dr. G?
That's why I drink.
So in the movie Orca, we understand all this stuff about orcas themselves, and the movie explains how the two orcas are in a pod or whatever, they'll mate for life, and then the one of the mates was killed, and then that other mate goes and finds revenge.
Right.
So when these stories started popping up this summer about
when you first talked about doing this podcast,
exactly. When it's this whole pod of orcas starts attacking boats off the coast of Portugal, and it seemed to be the same ones, and like the children of the leader that they call White Gladys.
Wow, that's so much like this movie, right? Like that the locals had a name for the the beast, right?
And like the operating theory that they're going off of is that like White Gladys had a run-in with a boat, or something happened.
Yeah, some sort of revenge,
and so they're out there like destroying rudders, and they sank 3 boats or whatever.
Calculated, right? Like they know how to hit the boats.
Yeah,
like how to that's amazing.
Yeah, and just like the Charlotte Rampling speech, they're communicating that they know what they're doing. It's very interesting.
And then it all popped up in Avatar: The Way of Water
a year ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Big epic scene.
And somehow 6 months before, I guess maybe they were playing the movie underwater for these whales.
The whales know who James Cameron is
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say
to tie it in further,
He had a screening.
All these fish are down there. He's like, you don't know the guy with the sequels. The guy that does all the sequels. The sequel master.
Yeah.
Terminator 2 is better than the first one. No, yeah, I mean, I think that this all lines up, and I think it's one of those things where reality is imitating art, and but it's also because this movie took pieces from a bunch of movies. This movie is such a Frankenstein of a bunch of different movies.
Avatar 2.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Avatar 2. And I think Orca's just one piece of this. I think Pete's Dragon's a piece of this. There's Never Ending Story is 100% a piece of this. There's quite a bit. T2, Abyss. Yeah. It's a kind of a James Cameron best of, if you will, movie. He kind of displayed more James Cameron stuff. Yeah. Like, let's take a look at. Remember, I could do some of this stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Something happened. Hey, John Connor. I mean, Spider. Why don't you come on over here, buddy? And
Spider, why can't we kill? You just can't. Why? God. I totally get it. It is definitely, especially the last hour to me, like felt like the James Cameron reunion tour. But it actually works. I mean, it's really great. And
because he's a fucking master filmmaker. Like that's the thing.
Totally.
Like the guy can put together. As cheesy as it was, like in moments, and I felt like at points, especially when the Colonel received his Na'vi body that he's now going to be in, when his memory was implanted in this avatar, right? And all of a sudden now he needs to remember that, you know, his memories are someone else's, and he kind of has to train himself.
The idea is to get the minds of the saltiest on-world operators, like Corporal Wainfleet over there, and your recom now, Colonel, loaded with my memories and my charm.
That whole scene felt like the line that you're waiting for to get on the Avatar ride at Universal or something.
Right.
Hey, come on, recruit. Why don't you come on up here? Are you ready to get in your Na'vi suit, you know?
Yeah.
And,
Right.
And you see the thing floating in the
So that is in the
tub.
first, like half an hour of the movie.
Yeah.
I was still firmly arms crossed right there.
Yeah,
And,
totally. Absolutely.
You get the Sully kids like saying, "Hey, bro, what up, bro?" and some of that stuff, I was like, "Oh man." Oh.
Yeah.
Bro, come on, bro.
They did that same thing that movie, what the hell was it? Bryan Singer movie with Tom Cruise. The World War II one.
Valkyrie.
When they changed from German to English, and it was like in one sentence, they kind of did that transition.
That was Hunt for the Red October. Yeah, exactly.
They did that in that too?
Yeah. Oh, and Chris McQuarrie did it again in because he wrote Valkyrie,
right?
And with Tom Cruise, and they did it again in the newest Tom Cruise Tries to Kill Himself show.
Mission Impossible.
Mission Impossible.
Dead, whatever, part 1.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Mission Impossible 12 is going to be a fucking snuff film, man. That guy's just... Yep.
Exactly. Mission Impossible, Faces of Death.
Mission done.
Yeah.
Like honestly, I do think at this point Tom will definitely go like past whatever ending Paramount wants to give to it. He's just like, nope, I'm still making them, you know.
I'm calling it on this show, and I like Tom Cruise, don't get me wrong, and I love his movies, but he's going to go in a stunt. That's how we're going to lose Tom Cruise.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's
what he's
the
trying
goal
to do.
You know.
I mean, it's so spectacular. It's the only way that guy can go out. He's Tom fucking Cruise, man.
Before his death becomes her elixir wears off, he has to go out and fake his own death or whatever.
Right. He's using the Tolkien brain juice or whatever to defy aging or whatever.
I mean,
that was kind of cheesy, right? Thank you for pointing that out. It was an age-defying thing, which is more relatable to this Avatar than it would have been probably to the other Avatar, right? Because anti-aging is so huge right now, right? Especially with like gels and all natural ingredients and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and also like, you know, like weird conspiracy theories, and then also like, you know, the weird billionaires who do like the blood transfusions,
right,
thinking that'll help.
Yeah.
You know. Anyway,
young blood. from a killer whale.
Yeah, exactly. From a Tolkien.
Perfect. I mean, that's part of Avatar was the blood rejuvenation.
So we talk about James Cameron being a master filmmaker. Obviously, he's taken a bit of some other movies in this one, but he does kind of create these amazing stories and can stitch together these amazing tales.
Yeah.
And he uses all this really amazing technology. Wouldn't you guys have been way more impressed had he done this practically?
That's one of my main...
That's the thing is, how would he do it? I mean,
so the Na'vi, I think that it could have been done practically as the Na'vi, and a lot of the foliage that's in the foreground would need to be done practically, so on sound stages, but you'd still be able to have those big vistas and those large moments where you could switch to a dragon or whatever those things are, and go CG. But I think to see like a practical big tall Na'vi working with use like Peter Jackson, like the Lord of the Rings effects when they were doing that forced perspective.
Yeah,
you start pulling stuff like that, like to make them look so much more gigantic. I would be so much more impressed with that, just from like a craft standpoint.
I mean, in my notes here and just when I was watching it, that's the main thrust of the arguments I have with it is that it basically takes its spectacle and just tries to like keep upping the ante on it. It's
kind of a tech demo for like a new like engine of creating a 3D world, and he just keeps saying, "Here, look at this one. Now we can do water." And dude, at some points in this movie, I thought there was real water on the screen. Like the CG is unfucking believable in this. But at any given time in this movie, I kept thinking, this CG is fucking awesome. Not at one time did I think these Na'vi look awesome, or this, Jake Sully is a cool character. I was always like, damn, his mouth is really like synced up with everything. And I do not feel the uncanny valley business that you do with other CG moments. Like, he nailed it.
Yeah. That's the part that, like, I mean, this movie is, I don't know what, 97, 95% animated?
Except for Spider?
CG. It's like there's Spider, there's Eddie Falco, there's the flashback with Giovanna Ribisi. I mean, it's like there's very few.
Right, so you got the line waiting to get on the Avatar ride section, which is a lot of human beings, right? In video, it's not even really in the frame.
Right,
and then you've got a Spider. That's pretty much it.
Right. So it's like, I guess I've heard, Michael, I know you have mentioned the Uncanny Valley in previous conversations we've had about this film, but I never really got that on this one. Mostly, I think, because to me, sort of psychologically, it felt like we were just watching an animated movie most of the time.
Right. Well, and that was one of my main comments in my notes, was that essentially it's such a prolonged version of an Uncanny Valley hyper photorealistic animated movie. It gave me a headache, just in the sense that your brain's constantly going, it's not real, but it looks extremely real. You know. Yeah. There's some point, I think, where you cross between animation and photorealism, where it's entirely a photorealistic thing, but it's also entirely animated, and your brain is just, stressing itself out, going, God damn it, I can't put these two halves together. It's like two magnets trying, like, with opposite polarity. You're trying so hard,
You're definitely describing the Uncanny Valley, and that is like the Polar Express and Beowulf and some of that stuff.
And Beowulf, yeah. So there's Zemeckis animated stuff.
Yeah.
Well, but that's creepy because it's more primitive, but it was at least
intended to be fully animated.
Yeah, I mean, still silly enough that you can kind of ignore the Uncanny Valley. Like, most Uncanny Valley stuff has always been obnoxious. I mean, something like Tintin, for instance, where the characters are very definitely cartoonish in a way, but like they still have realistic eyes or whatever. You're just like, your brain is just going, God damn it, stop. It's just like, pick one or the other.
Not quite there, yeah. I don't know. For some reason, I didn't really experience that with this one. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you saw it in the theater, right? You had the full theater experience.
I saw it in 3D, like IMAX 3D.
So you got the full experience too.
Yeah.
And it was intended and shot in 3D, right? He made this for 3D.
Right.
This wasn't a post-production thing?
No. Yeah. I mean, of course, this was... I feel like it's a good point to bring up that it is this Frankensteinian kind of thing of this cobbled together of ideas, but I feel like the movie itself is also kind of Frankensteining parts of the original film, which, of course, is, 13 years old, and that's...
because there's a whole new set of people that need to watch this. And this one, wasn't the other one an R-rated, or was that also a PG-13?
I think it was PG-13.
Because he does super wide releases, yeah, at least he has to do PG-13. But yeah, I mean... They'd have to remind everybody what the first movie was even about at this point, right? There's a whole new generation of people that are going to the movies and watching.
So yeah,
Avatar.
The original was PG-13.
Yeah.
Well, and he does that so well of like, and he did this with Aliens, he did this with T2, where it's like, obviously a lot of things will make a lot more sense to you if you see the first one, but you could just watch this.
This is absolutely a standalone film, and he did what he usually does. He did change the genre a bit of the film. The first one was more of like Fern Gully, right?
Yeah.
But it also was that kind of Na'vi versus humans battle, and then like more of a war type movie. This one didn't feel like that. I mean, it did in certain points, but this one felt more like the Last of the Mohicans or something like that. Like, kind of a look inside that. I don't know. Like, it seemed like it was a different kind of movie.
It is in that way, but it like the Uncanny Valley, it's subtle, it's like, because you're watching it and it's like, well, this is the same length as the last one. It's the same kind of self-indulgence as the last one. It's like taking you into this world and getting you used to it, but at the same time, it's like, well, if you've seen the first one, you've already been taken on that ride. You've already gone through Space Mountain
for 3 hours. It's like, and now you're just kind of going through it, but now it's underwater, and it's like, oh.
Well, I thought that was the most interesting part, was when we started getting introduced to this whole new tribe of people that are on this planet or moon of Pandora, and you're like, holy cow, this is different. So each of these biomes on this planet, there might be desert folk as well, so there might be, more that he can
They've got 7 more sequels to explore it, don't worry.
Well, I think he does have 3 more, right, including this one, so there's going to be 4 total in the series. So it's like, this one is now water. Is he going to go into like the fire people or the desert people next, like on a different part of the moon? But I really like
Avatar: The Way of Hoth.
I like that they look different, right? They had a greener texture to them, or greener color to them. Like they looked a little bit different, evolved a bit differently. Their tails were different, and they even made comments about that.
Right.
He's so detailed in what he writes, that lore that kind of comes with these. Like even Terminator, like that's a lore heavy movie. Like he's got that whole thing figured out. He's kind of Lucas-esque, when it comes to his worlds.
And again, Terminator's a perfect example where it's like the lore is all there, and you don't need to see any of it. It's all...
Maybe he's getting too much freedom with this, you mean? That he's showing too much lore?
I mean, just to take a divergence down the Terminator road for a minute, it's like, every single Terminator sequel, that's tried to dip into that lore in any way, shape, or form has failed. T2 had the optimum amount of that to make it just to
the same amount that it had in the first one. It was just like a little
to still keep
minutes.
You interested and let your imagination play with it more than anything else.
Because that's what's scarier too about it, is the unknown about it. Because when the Christian Bale shit came out, it was kind of like, that was kind of disappointing actually. It wasn't all that bad.
It's a big CGI spectacle, which is like just not as thrilling.
I'll be nice once, then I won't.
Well, and again, this over length idea, of course, all goes back to Lord of the Rings, and that was like the kind of the instigation of that insane running time that has now become so standard. And it never ceases to bother me that it's like, if you don't have a 3-hour story to tell, then don't take 3 hours to tell your story, please. Find a way to cut it down.
Yeah.
There was just absolutely no reason to keep it this length.
Absolutely, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I mean, that was certainly the case when we were talking about Mission Impossible 7 Part 1 or whatever.
Right.
There was like not enough story to maintain the nearly 3-hour running time.
Right.
This one, it's like, okay, because we introduced so many new characters, because all the banishment that happened in the origin story movie, which was the previous Avatar, that's all coming back. Okay, what are they doing now? They're building there. They're getting rid of Earth. They killed that thing, so they gotta come out here and try again on Pandora Moon, not in Kansas anymore.
We're not here to run a mine, Colonel. Earth is dying. Our task here is to tame this frontier. Nothing less than to make Pandora the new home for humanity.
And then they run away, and they learn the new world, and then Quaritch comes in and hunts them and smokes them out, and then they have the battle, and that's it. I mean, essentially, like, story-wise, you're really in a place where it's like it's sort of hard to cut.
Release, or I got to.
I mean, because if you cut all of the swimming and learning the way of water,
right,
the ending doesn't work.
I love that part. I love that
and
stuff.
Also it's awesome. I mean,
that part was great. I just thought that getting there, we had to set up 2 very distinct storylines. We had the Sully story, and then we've got the Colonel's story. Yeah. And the Colonel's story was also wrapped up in Spider's story. Spider's kind of got his own thing going on too. So there's really like 3 movies happening. I just really wish that, if you could have hit the button that said, yes, I've seen Avatar 1, I can skip the first 35 minutes. Like, just get me to where we see that the Colonel is now a blue guy. Okay, got it. Let's go. Now we get it. We could pick it up from there. And I think from there, I was actually really fucking into it the whole time. 2.5 hours.
I got.
So where the movie starts is like he's just like, hey, here's what we've been up to for the past 13 years.
Previously,
we had a bunch of kids.
Right.
We're just chilling out, and everything's really cool. We fly the dragons on date
last
nights
season on Avatar.
Yeah. Previously on Avatar. And exactly. But it's like, other than like just the catch up or like who's who. Okay, well, the Sigourney Weaver thing, well, that's kind of an adopted kid, and at the end of this movie, we didn't quite find out what that is yet. So that's
she's like the Messiah, right? She's the one. She's Neo with the tree. It kind of seems
like she's yeah, exactly. She's Sigourney Neo.
I can't remember. Did they explain how her character came back? I don't.
She was the daughter that came out of the plant, right? What didn't they like open it up and she was there at the end?
Well, the body that they have floating in the tank of Sigourney Weaver, that was Sigourney Weaver's avatar, and that was from the first one. And complicated whatever, they stuck it with the tree, and it,
Yeah.
But that husk of that body was pregnant, and they don't know how it was pregnant or whatever. But Kiri, the young Sigourney Weaver that came out, was adopted and raised by Jake and Natiri.
I see.
But she is super in touch with the Tree of Life and Pandora and whatever the hell is going on naturally
all
there.
That stuff.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's funny too because it's like all the I guess this is another thing. So I didn't see any of the trailers and whatever going into it. I've subsequently seen some trailers, and it's so hard to capture like in a trailer what it is that's interesting about this movie.
Don't worry, they tell you 1,000 times family, 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 family. It just like it cannot stop beating you over the head with it like it's a fucking Fast and Furious
movie. As a marketing
movie.
Campaign, exactly. As a marketing campaign, it's like, that would have not have gotten me to see the movie. I mean,
I actually like the first part of the trailer though because it's silent.
It is tough. Like I mean, obviously it is a particular set of skills to do a trailer and make it something that people want to like. Okay, well, I want to see that movie now. And taking this movie in particular, and making it something that like, okay, well, this is an interesting movie and there's a lot of good stuff in it, and like, okay, how much you hate the whale killers, and then how much you want the revenge for the whale, and you're like, yes, and you get all that scenes, and it's all done so well, and then all the James Cameron action at the end that like it plays to his strengths. But then, like you were saying, Brian, like all the stuff where it's like the kids learning how to swim or whatever turned out to be really, really engaging. And, the marketing for that, like, well, what the hell would you do with that? Like, how do you say, like, yeah, you're going to like this movie? Trust me.
I trust you. You can trust me.
I'm sure as much as they could get into with that is, like, you see that the two, tribes are going to get together, right? Or they're going to meet the other group, and that's probably all you can really show in a trailer, right? That these two are going to get together. Yeah. But what's the interesting stuff? How they learn from each other?
Oh, you can show everything. Don't worry. No, and that's, I mean, yeah, a modern trailer, and I've sat through an inordinate number of them recently. So, I mean, it's just I always shut my eyes because I know that about 90% of the movie is going to be shown in the trailer.
Yeah, I'm not saying that anybody does trailers well right now, and that part like it is definitely something that I find that trailers themselves like almost never make me want to watch the movie, or that they show you too much of it and all that stuff. And that's why I try to avoid them. But the idea is that like if you were to try and like think of some aspects of this movie. And like, what makes this one different from the first one? I've already seen the first one, so what do I need to see this one for? This is the reason why. What is that? You know what I mean? I don't know the answer to that question.
It's an A24 movie. Drip sounds. Old 80s rock song played in a lower key by a woman.
Exactly.
if the original singer was a male, of course, and if not, you just switch the gender.
Yeah. Or you get the thing where it's like the trailer is like, oh, there's a click sound. And then we do another one, and it's another click sound, and it keeps getting clickier and clickier and clickier until
oh man,
I hate you! I hate you to infinity, Noah! Penis face!
I did want to go back to what you were saying about some of those nice moments, though, that are in that you can't convey in the trailer. Right. One of those being when the young kids took the young Na'vi boy out into the outside of the reef. Where it was dangerous. Where
they're like, hey, let's go hunting. Yeah,
right.
That scene kind of felt like the Lost Boys. This guy getting taken out by this group of bikers that are promising them a good time, and all of a sudden they've got these plans, right? Or
it's just rice, Michael.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, how are your maggots, Michael? Exactly.
3 billion Chinese can't be wrong, Michael.
You're eating maggots. How do they taste?
But that scene kind of reminded me of that, and I thought it had the same like quality effect too. You know, it was like it really showed a lot, and then obviously it ended great. There's an awesome like Jaws type scene where the mother comes out to kill get the younger kid, right? Mama, and there's actual Jaws music that like starts playing in the background too. It's like da 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 da.
Yeah.
What I really love about that sequence though is like
it's a good one.
In certain ways, it is these sequences we've seen before. So we're up to Lost Boys of like okay, we're gonna get the one guy out there and he's gonna fall for it, and then like oh no, he's in much bigger danger than he thought.
And then there's always a bigger fish too.
And then
that part of the story,
that part
right?
of like there's always a bigger fish.
Yeah,
there's always a bigger fish.
But like what was great was that like right before the always a bigger fish moment, there's like the moment where he works his way down into the reef. The big shark monster can't get to him.
Were you holding your breath the whole time?
Oh man, I would have died.
I tried, yeah.
But like
that's why I didn't make it through the movie that time either. No, I'm
just passed out.
You like woke up hours later. It was playing the credits. He was like, "Oh, where am I?" But he finds that little space in the reef. The shark can't get to him. It swims away, or it seems to swim away. And then he's like, "Okay, I'm trying to remember the thing. What do you do? The heartbeat? The like you hold your breath longer? Okay." And he's trying to do it, and he can't do it. And that moment is one of those ones that like the sort of patience to build that moment and communicate it without any words of him like, okay, I know I just need to relax my heart and okay. And then he can't do it. And he's like, fuck it. And he has like swim back out. And then he's like, all right, well, I'm not going to just be chomped by my feet. I'm going to try to stab it. And then the bigger fish happens. And then you're like, oh, he's going to be able to swim to the surface. Nope, he passes out. And he actually was at the end of his breath there. And it's like, all those little things like were, played so masterfully, and also with the patience to get all of those moments in there and not like just hope that you get it with shortcuts and then like, well, why didn't he just swim up, or whatever, or why didn't he just hide there, or
because then you get introduced to his relationship with the Tokun,
right,
which is that bigger fish. But this is kind of like the Falcor of the sea from Neverending Story, right? Kind of the luck dragon of the sea.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was the bridge to get there. That whole action-packed fucking multi-million-dollar, probably $20 million sequence, right? At least. Yeah, just to get to this here. So this guy's going to be good with the cool whales that are on the moon as well. So now we're going to get to see that, and he's going to be able to control that. And I don't know, it's just he's really good at connecting things, I guess, is what I'm trying to say out of that. It's me being excited about storytelling.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing is like, I 100% agree with you, Michael, that ever since Lord of the Rings sort of ruined the template of the blockbuster, and even if the movie doesn't have this much story to tell, it must be 245 at a minimum, because there's somehow in the spreadsheet algorithm of like, oh, let's greenlight this, we have to hit this character for this demographic and this character for this demographic, and we have to have this line for this line, and the movie has to be this long, otherwise it's not going to be a blockbuster. You can't have an hour and a half blockbuster
formula.
And it's all become part of the formula, and this one, while it does technically hit that formula, aside from some of the rocky beginning.
No, there's great movie there.
It definitely gets to the part where like it hooks me, and I'm like, and now I just wanted to spend as much time as possible.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating because certainly Avatar is a little bit different than your average epic in that it is very kind of intoxicating to be in that environment, and the indulgence does work for it. In that regard, if you're really into that world and getting, more and more just pleasure out of just seeing people, kind of do kind of what they're trying to do in that movie rather than following it as a story, which, I mean, I did enjoy it a little more the second time around because I wasn't just going, okay, like thinking, whatever exec going, okay, what other deleted scenes do you have? Let's put those back in.
No, he famously, Fox is like, hey, we've got some notes. He's like, no notes.
Right.
No, you don't.
For who?
Yeah.
Did you need me to give these notes to somebody for you?
How many notes do you have? You know.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can give those to someone else. Yeah.
I think what you liked about these movies, and I think all of James Cameron is living in that world. Like, I think you said it pretty well. It's like you're kind of like getting engrossed in the world that he's creating. And I think it kind of goes into all of the detail that he puts in those things.
Yeah.
Even down to the handcuffs being slap bracelets at one point, but they look unbreakable and they're like super material. But also the stuff like the submarines and the stuff that was kind of right out of the Abyss, but also an updated version of the Abyss. The crabs, they would walk as crabs when they get on. Like, it's all very thoughtful. It kind of reminds me of how Frank Herbert kind of wrote into Dune, how all of the machines were practically operated more like natural bugs and animals and things like that. It kind of felt like that.
Like it was very, very thought out and all these different things. And of course, like, you know, he's done this on lots of movies and we perhaps don't notice it. But like
in Aliens, he designed a gun. He invented a gun out of a Steadicam. You know, like
and I mean, two things. One, like he kind of comes from the
special effects
world, like Battle Beyond the Stars with
Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, of course.
Matte painting. The guy's a fucking artist too. Like, get the fuck out of here, dude. God damn it.
And in between these two Avatar movies, he designed like 3 or 4 subs and like went to the Marianas Trench and like, you know, went to Titanic 30 times, and we've lost Brian. He's given up. but
just had to take a minute.
Give up, yeah. Sorry, I needed to
had to go take a lap.
Quite honestly, one of the most prolific people in entertainment.
No, for sure, and you know, absolutely. There's no way of denying that in any way, shape, or form, and I wouldn't do that. But I mean, I guess I'd say, you know, the thing with Avatar to me is that to its length, it does certainly feel like it's geared more towards being like a series, you know, like some kind of a mini series.
It is a 4-film series.
Well, yeah, like you were saying, it's 3 films in one, and it really is. Yeah. I would love it actually if you could break it up and make it like an hour installment, you know, where you get to go see an hour of it at the theater every week and just do that, you know.
What an interesting experiment that would be. It would be kind of going back to the 40-minute featurettes that they would have before. And
yeah, I mean, because like almost like a Jacques Cousteau kind of little documentary. It like that is what it struck me more as being more appealing as than a story, you know.
Yeah, but like the first hour, you wouldn't even get them getting to the reef people or whatever yet. You know, it's like it structurally speaking, like, you know, that wouldn't quite work on this one in particular.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem with the economy of his storytelling to me is
that's
like
the thing. It's like I like when you watch it in the theater or something, like, you know, where you're like, I've got to turn this off. I've got to go walk outside and hang out with the dog for a minute, or, you know, go make a sandwich or whatever. It's like, you know, I didn't get that feeling where it's like I've got to stop this movie, because I was engaged from maybe the 25-minute mark on. Like, you know, it was locked in.
Yeah.
That's right. They're coming for you.
So, I think the really interesting thing is, like, you know, how much more you get invested in the sort of like horrors that are wrought by Quaritch in this one. I mean, the last one.
I'm sorry, what's his Quaritch?
Quaritch, I think.
That's the Colonel, right?
Okay. Stephen Lang, the bad guy.
Yeah, which really, it did really come through Stephen Lang, right? His face and
yeah, totally.
I like him a lot as an actor. I think he's fantastic.
Yeah. And we have all witnessed Stephen Lang's great becoming.
Before me, you are a slug in the sun. You are privy to a great becoming, and you recognize nothing. You are an ant in the afterbirth. It is your nature to do one thing correctly: tremble.
Fucking awesome, man.
And now he's like he's all jacked up and you know,
ripped.
Yeah.
He still should have played Cable, I think.
Little guy. Yeah. But he, you know, so he in the last one, he was also the sort of agent of, you know, violence and destruction, and the sort of most horrifying version of that was him, you know, blowing up the sacred tree and everything, and obviously that meant a lot to a lot of the people there. But this one, they found a way to make the sort of like audience enraging horror that he commits a lot more personal, like both for the Kate Winslet character, who, at the time, because I didn't know anything about this movie, I didn't realize that was Kate Winslet till
Me
much
neither.
later. I was like, wow.
Yeah, until after I saw it.
And of course she was great, as she always is. But what it meant to that character, also, like, how, you were feeling terrible as the, like, whale was being torn apart and hunted.
Awful.
During that Moby Dick scene or whatever. And in that sense, like, you are all of a sudden, locked in a little more, I think, with this one, and like wanting to, get to that part where they're like, they're, shooting those arrows through the little, helicopters and just like, fucking up the pilot.
Fun.
And you're like, yeah!
So fun. He was really pushing the PG-13 with some of those fights.
Yeah, and the arm, slicing off.
Yeah, at one point the fish ripped the arms off the guy, right? With the two things were like attached to the drawn and quartered kind of thing.
Right.
Jesus.
Someone gave Cameron a note, and he just gave him a stern look and went, "There's no blood." And like,
exactly. It was like him just. What was that note again?
Yeah.
PG-13, right? Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to start lighting these hundreds on fire if you don't shut up.
I thought they did a good job. I mean, obviously this guy is a master of action scenes and sequences. I mean, he's been doing that for 40 years now.
Yeah.
But and he can always stick the landing. And the last line in this movie was,
"This is where we make our stand."
Let's get it done. And it was like, it was like a nice button. Everything kind of comes to a close. For some reason, he, unlike other directors, can actually finish a fucking story, even if it's part of a 3-parter right now. He still made this thing its own contained. I think that's really impressive.
Right, and to bring it up once again, like, unlike maybe Fellowship of the Ring, where it's just like, oh, wait, what? It stopped? It's over? Like, this one, you felt like...
next reel, please.
Right. This one, at least, you felt like this chapter had come to a close.
Absolutely, and this is part 1 of 3, but it was a complete part 1.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I think this is like James Cameron at its fullest in this ending, right? It was Titanic with the ship falling over.
Yes.
You've got the T2 battle between these athletic humanoids, right? Yeah. These two giant humanoid people are just fucking wrestling like straight up. The abyss, obviously, there's water. That's an easy one.
Deep water creatures.
Well, and the moon pool, right? In the middle
yes.
of the boat.
Oh, yes. The moon pool. That's right.
And like water coming up, and it's like,
Yeah.
It was almost like, breathe, you bitch, breathe.
Exactly. You never backed away from anything in your life. Now fight. Man, that's Ed Harris. Ed Harris at his fucking. Oh man, so powerful.
Gnarliest.
I love the abyss, man.
Totally.
Yeah.
But no, I really like this. I think that I thought it, like you said, once you get past that initial part, that first like prologue, if you will, like this movie really takes off and it doesn't stop. And I know I kept saying it. It's like once I got to that end of the prologue, I looked at the clock and it's only like a half hour, 40 minutes in, and I'm like, shit. But seriously, like I didn't look at the clock again after that.
Yeah.
Like once I got past that moment, I could get through the movie. I was like, all right, I'm on for the ride. And it really felt like a good, smooth ride that always took you into something new. And even some of the cheese moments felt okay. Like even Spider's cheesy lines, it kind of had that John Connor thing going on.
Yeah, a little bit. Exactly like and then you can really shine them on with Hasta la Vista.
Exactly, yeah.
If the movie was failing on all other levels, you'd make fun of those lines more. But, because it was working, you're a lot more lenient with what you're able to accept,
Again, James Cameron, dude, the magician, just diverting your attention to all the pretty jewels and shit that's all around the edges.
Right.
But honestly, I thought it was a good movie. I thought this one was a much better story than the first one. I thought that this one has, they're kind of getting more into what this planet actually is and how these people interact with it, especially with Iowa, Iowa's the name of that's the name of like the Mother Earth, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then the great, and then the daughter, the Sigourney Weaver, young adult YA Sigourney Weaver, whoever, and then how her connection is with that and stuff like. So we're learning more about that, which I'm really interested in learning in some of the next films. So maybe we'll have to do this again. I don't know, and then we'll do all 3 of them.
Yeah.
12 hours.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And I think the other thing too is like that, unlike some other big movies, they had a consequential death for our main characters here, and like they did it in such a way that like even though you knew the younger son more than the older son as a character, but like even though you didn't know the older son quite as much, because of how it was affecting Jake and Natiri and everyone else. I mean, it was actually, it was really affecting. And like
a gut punch, I think you can call that.
Yeah. Well, it was just, I mean, it was done so well. It was done with so much patience.
I'm sitting through 3.5 hours of movie, and then the son dies at the end. Yeah. Come on, Jim.
Yeah. And then, you know, the sort of like the funeral thing was really touching too. And like they sold that. At the very end, he has that sort of memory of his son fishing.
Oh, God.
Which was in the beginning. And because they, you know, had the patience or whatever, and the trust in the audience that they could sit through that first half hour.
I remember it.
Once we got there, it paid off, and it really, you know, sort of was able to bring home the bacon emotionally at the end.
Callback, right? Same kind of effect.
Exactly. I mean, you know, and okay, it's no surprise that he's able to do that. I mean, it's like the love you wife scene in Abyss and all these different things, where he's he's able to sort of like, you know, have his action and his emotion too. And I mean, I haven't seen Avatar 1 since I saw it in the theater in 2009.
Me neither. Yeah.
But like, you know,
you almost said 1989. roughly the time it came out.
Same time the Abyss came out. Yeah. I'm curious to revisit it now, but I don't know that one is gonna bring home the bacon the way I felt like this one did, especially at the end there.
And then for the end of this podcast, we're going to do the Free Willy whale coming up out of the water, slow motion, almost Orca shot that happens at the end of this movie, dude. I was like, that's Orca.
Yeah, it was, and it was full on Free Willy, but you're like, yes,
exactly. It was just like at the end of Free Willy,
or the end of Jaws 3.
Yeah, exactly.
The dolphins live, yay.
And you know, exactly, and how satisfying was it when they were like crushing those submarines, and you know, that whole scene was
awesome, dude.
Too soon.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, right.
Dude, I just got to the end of my notes here, and the one thing I go, who was Kate Winslet in this? Because I think her name just comes up on the credits, you know?
Right.
She was Ronell.
Right.
Sure.
She was Cliff Curtis's wife. In the sort of Sea People clan.
Yeah.
Oh, she was. Oh, they were great.
The one who was very much mourning the whale that had been hunted.
I do want to. Oh my God, she was brilliant in that part. But I do want to say that I thought that that family, they stole the show for me in terms of performances. The husband and the wife that were running that village. I was like, dude, do not fuck with them. And the way she comes out and she's just fucking mean mugging them, you know, and she's pregnant, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And she's just like not giving a shit. Like, who the fuck is this? Like, and like he's the king was the calm one. Like, she was the one that you don't want to fuck with, man. Oh, she was so good.
What was also cool is, like, you know, they did this without saying anything, and like, and this is through an animated movie, by the way.
Exactly, the emotion.
Cliff Curtis, like, asking her permission without saying a word, and
just
her
a
granting
look.
it. Yeah, and then he's like, "Okay, I've decided." You know, it's like,
we discussed.
But yeah,
sorry, I had to bring that up because I forgot how awesome that was. Yeah.
So I think to sort of tie us back into our Orca tie-in, our unlikely Orca tie-in to Avatar 2: The Way of Water, was that, like, in the Charlotte Rampling speech, they talk about how sort of advanced the Orca are, and in Avatar, the reason that Payakun, the sort of damaged best friend of Jake's son, the whale, is he's an outcast, and he's not allowed to hang out with the rest of the whales because he violated the Tolkien code. And like, there's sort of like the way that they talked about how the Tolkien are so much more advanced. The legend has it that they used to fight all the time, and that, it would always be killing each other. And then now they've decided that they now dabble in pacifism and are fully committed to it. Not in Nam, of course, as we saw with Payakun, taking Nam to Quaritch and his evil,
bunch of anti-sea monkeyites or whatever you want to call them.
And like all those guys. And it's interesting because that idea of like how the whales are the sort of like top predator in the sea there. Orcas, I guess, are as well.
Oh yeah.
And yet they don't attack or kill humans unless they're at SeaWorld. But out in the wild, they don't do that, which made the whole thing feel so different when White Gladys was going out there and fucking up the ships out there in Portugal. And that, too, sort of really reminded me of the end of this movie where it's like, at least the one whale is deciding, game on, motherfuckers, you know?
I mean, the full breach out of the water to land directly on the deck of the ship was so badass, man. I was like, dude, that was awesome.
Just Cameron thumbing his finger at Spielberg going, eat this.
I'd love to see Cameron do a Godzilla or something like one of his own. I mean, he's basically doing it with these, but I'd love to see him take on an IP like that. Like, I think that'd be awesome.
Oh, you know what's funny? Ryan Hitchcock, I had a little conversation with him because he had watched Avatar too, and I was like, man, doesn't it kind of remind you a little bit of a kaiju film?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the kaiju aspect to this one, you know, kind of like where I was trying to express with the whole like difference between the kaiju in this one with the whale and the tree in the last one. It's like it gives it so much more when there is an animal or a thinking, feeling being's perspective on it versus the tree in the last one.
Right. It's a little more Godzilla 1985.
Yeah. yeah. Exactly.
Search for something. You never quite know what.
Michael, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
Really appreciate you coming on and talking all these, I guess, scary water movies now again. So that might be a theme for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Scary aquatic animals.
Whales and orcas and sharks, oh my.
Mockbusters and blockbusters. We got them all here.
Yeah.
Next time, and I guess this could go in our inspiring series, we'll be talking about some prototype Scream films. Yeah. Before we got the amazing meta horror comedy, brilliant fucking amazing movie, Scream, we had these 3 movies that came out several years before, which are Friday the 13th, Part 6, There's Nothing Out There, and Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Right.
Yeah. This is a good block.
Yeah. So I think, you know, what's kind of cool about this is that as sort of innovative and groundbreaking as Scream turned out to be, and certainly as an impact on the culture that it was, you know, it wasn't born out of thin air. There were certainly
shocker here, exclusive.
Exclusive. Yeah, there were some you know antecedents to it. So we're going to sort of dive into those and see what we come up with. Should be a lot of fun.
Hell yeah.
We can still get this done.
Hell yeah.
I can't believe I'm tied up again.
All right, thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to subscribe and follow us on all the podcasts and social platforms at the Grindhouse Institute. And if you really want to give us a boost, check us out on Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps us to get noticed. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll be back next time.
Ciao.
You saved my life. Thank you. Buddy, I have no idea what you just said.